We're as promiscuous as the chimpanzees. Would we be doing it all the time if we could?
I don't know how to measure that scientifically.
It's easy to have sex. Well, let's talk about that. But didn't that make our species better? Do we have any evidence that prehistoric societies had therapy?
Looking for some Hopecore. We need some Hopecore.
Hi, my name is Liz, and welcome to Hopecore, the group chat where we send each other hope instead of doom. Today on the show, we have someone that I've had ants in my pants about, all right? I have not nerded out with a book and an author in a very long time, as hard as I have now. Her name is Cat Bohannon, and the book is called Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution. It rewired my brain. My brain is different. There was a pre-Liz, and now there's a post-Eve Liz, and we are going to talk to Kat about all of the amazing findings in her book. You're going to want to take notes, okay? You're going to want to write things down because this is going to be amazing. I am obsessed with you.
Okay.
I have been reading your book, and it is like beyond dog-eared. Like it's like pieces, like pages have started falling out because I've been so immersed in just like.
I'm so glad you like it.
I love it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a women's studies major. Okay. So
I was not.
You were not.
No.
Well, let me tell you what it was like in like the early 2000s. If you were a women's studies major, you can confirm this. You would be at a party and a guy would come up to you and start with this sentence. And he would say, well, evolutionarily speaking, women aren't supposed to. And they would go into a theory that would disprove feminist, sort of like statement or truth.
Or he believed to disprove.
Of course, right? Okay. And so they would say, evolutionarily speaking, men are evolved to be like shitty dads, right? Like men are evolved to spread their seed and sleep with as many women as possible, / the theory of rape, right? The evolutionary theory of rape, that men have to rape because they're just trying to spread their seed. Whenever evolutionary theory kind of came into the chat, I would start like having a brain
You would go
aneurysm.
dry. It was just a desert.
Oh,
yeah,
I would for sure dissociate and just be like, or I'd start screaming and lose my voice because we still went to clubs back then and, life was fun. So when I heard about your book, I mean, you are putting the female body at the center of evolution, which is doing something that in that field has just not been done. I was looking at stats. 87% of the scientists that are named in biology textbooks are men. And therefore, all of the theories, some of these men aren't even bad people. It's just they're literally putting their biases, right? And they don't even realize they have a bias because they're male and they're white and they're cis. And that's just the perspective. But you are actually not using ethics or sociology or like morality to defend the center of women or women being at the center of evolution. You're actually using evolutionary theory to make pretty like feminist points, which you're not even trying to be feminist.
I am so obviously a feminist,
You
to be clear.
Okay.
I am a woman sciencing in public.
Right.
Like there is no moment at which I am not obviously a beneficiary of the long, deep, many hundreds, not just 50 years history of the women's lib movement.
Right.
Because it is a liberation movement. We are meaning to free.
Yeah.
But also, obviously, am feminist. It's just that you don't need to be motivated merely by the reduction of the suffering of others, though still good goal to have, in order to make the argument.
Yeah.
It's just that these are the fucking bodies that make the babies. And that's how evolution works. So it's really weird to make this a side character.
Yes.
Which is what it had been.
Yes.
That.
And you opened up the book talking about how because the female body was like seen as like a man but with boobs, anesthesia, like women, we didn't test anesthesia on female bodies until 1999.
Not properly. Yeah, we've done some things in rat, but not properly.
Which is an insane...
Yeah. We wake up sooner from, and by wake up, the formal terms emerge. Okay. We emerge beautifully, usually clumsily, from anesthesia sooner than male patients.
Interesting. I think you say we metabolize drugs more quickly.
We don't entirely know.
Okay.
Okay. Here's what we do know. Maybe a liver story, which is a metabolism story, but you metabolize drugs in a bunch of places. The liver's one of them. Okay. It may be weirdly a brain story also. Okay. So we did some, do you want the full thing now?
I want the full.
Okay. No, this is not like my lab. So, but I know of this work. Okay. So one of the ways that you control for hormones in rodent is by snipping out their balls. We've done this a lot. We have also cut out a lot of ovaries, just a lot of microsurgeries, which I have now learned from the people who do it is really hard. They're very small.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's very tiny little balls. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the oophorectomy. That's the, you cut out the eggs and the ovaries rather, and the testicles to say, okay, now endogenously now, like your body's not making hormones the way it used to. Now what we're going to do is intravenously, again, very tiny, we're going to control the amount of hormones circulating in your body, right? So that's how they do it across male and female. So, okay, if you want to test, like, is testosterone a thing? Their central question is, like, is there a reason for male sleepiness? Mm-hmm. Which is broadly applicable. Okay, right? So, okay. But in this case, right, they're going to say, okay, why is it more relevantly for suffering? Why are female and male patients responding differently to sedation, right? Yeah. So then they control for their hormones, they do the sedation drug, and after, measure when they come to, and then they dissect their brains. Okay, thank you to all rats everywhere. Yeah. So the thing is that the male brain seems to just, even when you're reducing those androgens, even when you're just, it's not a ball story, even when it's just like, it seems to be more oriented towards sleepiness.
Interesting.
Like in a deep core brain way. Yeah.
Wow. But don't women need more sleep than men? Isn't that like a famous fact?
So the fact of oriented towards attention or rousability isn't a thing that is tied to how much sleep you need.
Right. Okay.
It's just how easy are you to wake.
Oh.
Yeah, they're harder to wake.
And that's
in rat.
And
maybe under sedation. That's all we really know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And so human men.
Well, we're not going to dissect a bunch of human men. We're not going to cut off their balls and then dissect them. We are not terrible. Ethics and stuff.
That's the thing. We don't do to them what they do to us. And that's why the world is still intact somewhat. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. I had so many brain orgasms when I was reading your book because there are things that I truly, it's science and there's so many interesting facts in your book, but it really reframes like history and it reframes evolution. And I think for me, it also reframed so many things in my present day life, like aging, like body stuff, like dating, which I really want to get into. But one of the first things in your book that I really love is that you talk about female fat, okay? And you talk about fat in our thighs, in our butts, in our hips.
Yes.
And the first thing that you do is like liberate women from the idea that our fat is a flaw, but that it's actually helped us evolve as a species. Can you tell us all about that?
Yeah. So it's super weird that we are actually one of the fattest primates out there. And that is true from birth. And by fattest, I mean our adipose tissue. And by that, I especially mean the fat that's under your skin. We have way more of it than your average primate, way more of it than a lot of mammals. And we're born it's like we're born as fat as a baby seal. All right. And that's why they're so cute. And that only grows from there. And the little rolls, they're so cute. And then you get the cute aggression. You want to like bite them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't entirely know why. There's a lot of evolutionary theories, But then you can also look at sex differences in adiposity, right? Which isn't just a metabolism question like how efficient are you at using the food or storing it? How much energy do you need to run that thing that you carry around we call a body, right? It's also like, why when you have a lot of estrogen on board, do you distribute it differently? Because that's true. That is true whether you are a person with 2X chromosomes. That's true whether you're on gender supportive therapy with a lot of estrogen. Like if you have a high estrogenic profile, you are storing way more fat in your gluteofemoral region. So that's your upper thighs, your hips, and your butt. The booty. It's the booty. That's where the booty's from.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is it doesn't behave in the same way as other depots of fat. Like I say in the book, that it stores these special kinds of lipids, these long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's like your omega-3, like your fish oil, right? Yeah. But the thing is that our livers are really bad at stitching that thing together from smaller parts. So we get it mostly from our diet. Like we eat it, we store it. We eat it, we store it.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And actually, we eat it, we store it, and it might help if you're a person who ends up giving birth. Because babies really need these specific kinds of fatty acids to build their retinas and their brains. And that's maybe part of why, there's the theory, why why we store it up until we're pregnant, if we choose to become pregnant and can be, right? So like we are just storing this, first place to gain, last place to lose, that thing. We're storing it until the third trimester, when the baby has this like crazy straw straight to mom's butt, right? And you're actually losing you're mobilizing huge amounts of your fat from your butt when you're pregnant, if you get pregnant in that third trimester, and then through breastfeeding, and then it like kind of recovers. So you're not just changing the shape of your pelvis when you get pregnant, right? Which is a thing, right? To make room
for the baby,
for the horror to come. Yeah, you know, but, right?
It sounds terrible.
You know, I respect the people who say they like it, because if you spend any amount of time thinking about what it means to say you like it, that's kind of like, that's some kink. That's like deep difference and respect for diversity. Most of us are not fond of putting a watermelon out of a lemon-sized hole. That's not a thing.
Well, you talk about that in the book, that it's actually absurdly huge, right? The human head is not, we have a huge head.
Just because something is normal doesn't mean it's okay. You know, evolution produces a lot of bullshit, a lot of things that actually are not great for the people who have those body plans or the other animals that do, right? You know, but if you can survive it, then it may not meet that threshold for evolving away from having that.
Yeah. I love that. And I didn't know that compared to other animals, the sort of whole activity of giving birth is completely different for human women. It is much harder and it's much longer.
Well, I mean, we're still trying to get a thing out. So like other mammals, we have a thing in, trying to get it out. Super reasonable desire in that circumstance, right? But the thing that's unusual about us compared to other primates, because we're primates, right? You know, we're apes. We're great apes. Right. Is that our pregnancies and our births and our postpartum recoveries are much longer and harder and more prone to complications than they are for those other similar animals, right? Like massively so. I can make this real for you. Sorry for any pregnant viewers.
Skip this part.
Well, or don't, or, you know, be because aware. I'm not, or be incredibly impressed with yourselves. How about that?
That's right.
Just be super impressed, because it is impressive. Okay? So the thing is, it's like first time human mom, labor, top to bottom, then delivery, 12 to 16 hours. 0 to babies, 12 to 16. Can take longer, minded, right? So, okay. And why? Because it takes a long time to dilate. It takes a long time to push. It takes a long time, actually, once the baby's head is in there, then they rotate 90 degrees to get the shoulders through, and then again. It's an Olympic sport, okay? It's a lot. It's a lot for both you and fetus to... But first time chimp mom, as we learned from the venerable Jane Goodall, top to bottom, labor to baby, 30 minutes. Okay, on average, it can go longer when things go wrong, but on average, 30 minutes. She gets a little pain, gets a little grimace, squeezes, baby's out, she's cool, knuckle walks the fuck away. You know, she's like, she's good. She is good. And that is a very different scenario for ours. But it's not just about the birth, it's also those like long gestational periods. Our placentas, that's like your docking station where that umbilical cord goes in. Okay. Yeah. Right, that's how you attach to the uterine wall. That placenta is more invasive in our species than it is in man. Like it really penetrates that mother's bloodstream. So it has deep metabolic effects, deep immunological effects, and deep effects on the cardiovascular system, which means then that the moment of detachment is not small. It's not simple.
It's huge. Okay, wow. So if you are giving birth or you have given birth,
you're going to be fine.
You're going to be fine, and you are incredible. It's one more reason that we should be literally just like all the time doing anything to make women's lives easier instead of harder, which leads me into, I want to say the part that blew my mind the most, but I think there's so many parts that blew my mind. The part that I could not get over was how you described that abortion is normal. Spontaneous abortions happen across the animal kingdom in so many different species. It literally has a name. Of course, it's the name of the man who discovered it. He named it after himself, the Bruce effect.
So the effect is called the Bruce effect, but it's because of his name and not because it indicates what effect he has on women. To be clear. Okay, so I'm sure he's very nice. The Bruce effect is this. If you put, and this is true for a lot of rodents, if you put unrelated male, you know, not the dad, in an enclosure with a female rat who's pregnant, she will abort a shockingly high number of times, right? Shockingly likely to abort is what I mean.
With her own body. Her body just biologically does it.
She's not throwing herself against the side of the cage. Like, but maybe she wants to, but she is not. No,
metaphorically,
So So your viewers might not know that the word miscarriage is made up. Miscarriage is the thing we use to make ourselves feel better because sexism. The technical term is spontaneous abortion, and then there are surgical abortions and there are medical abortions. It simply means the cessation of a pregnancy, regardless of whether or not what's in there is technically alive or capable of life outside the womb.
Right.
That's all that is.
Yep.
Yeah. So the word abortion, it means many things, but it really just means that also.
Yeah.
It really just means that. So in the animal world, spontaneous abortion, what we call miscarriage, right, is happening all the damn time. But it's not necessarily because there is something wrong with the baby. Sure, also that.
That can happen.
Also that.
Yeah.
But interestingly, there are these what I call socially stimulated abortions. Right? Which means that thing we call a miscarriage, that spontaneous abortion, is happening in response to a social signal, right? What's going on with the rats? Well, they cannibalize newborns, so that's not great. So why invest all this energy in making a baby and then nursing it when he's just going to eat it? Not great. We don't love that for her. It's very sensible. It's a good choice to make in a cannibal situation, right? But the cannibal thing is actually really normal in mammals. That's just so. And likewise, in many species where we find the Bruce effect, it's often because there is known either cannibalism or known infanticide in that species, and the male is then a threat. So again, why invest? So evolving mechanisms to not invest. It doesn't work all the way to the end of pregnancy. It seems to have in each species a kind of threshold, a kind of like, in our case, like if we were in the third trimester as a rat, the effect wouldn't
work. Okay.
No. But then you get the geladas, man. Okay, geladas are big, shaggy baboons, basically.
Yeah.
They live in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
It's interesting. They live in big groups, but there are harems, basically, the one guy with a bunch of females. Fine. Yeah. Interestingly, when there's a coup, when there's a male that takes over with the geladas, what's great about it is that the majority of the females who are pregnant will abort when the coup is successful, when it happens, right? So that's just another Bruce effect. Very common in mammals. Thing that seems built kind of into this system for a lot of us, just built in. It is natural to have abortions, right? But what's interesting there with the geladas, though, is that no male can successfully rout the old guy and become the new sexy prince or whatever, without approval of the females.
Oh, interesting.
So the theory goes, this is a really interesting paper, the theory goes that maybe in this case, because they don't have a whole lot of infanticide there, maybe in this case it's not like fear of dead baby. Maybe in this case, it's actually might as well bond with the new guy.
Wow.
And it's successful. Those who do are more likely to reproduce again sooner than the ones who didn't. So in other words, they're like, I'm going to invest in this new guy. None of this conscious. This is we're in Monkey Town here.
But that makes it even more.
And it is brain based in that it's in response to a complex social signal.
Yes.
Complex.
And by the way, there are so many parallels with human women.
Yes.
Right? So human women can't self-abort, although there's research showing that women who are living in famine, where there's a natural disaster, there will be a lot more pregnancy loss, abortions happening then.
Yes.
We talk about the mechanisms when a woman is raped and the abortion that happens then, and we'll table that, and I want to talk about it. But I just found that there were so many parallels with what happens to women, right? When you look at the data about why women get abortions, most abortions, and there's a thing called the Turnaway study that was done on, thousands of women who got abortions to find out why do they do it and then what happens to them when they don't get an abortion. And the data is really staggering. The vast majority of women who need abortions cite a lack of financial resources,
of course,
to keep the child alive. 73% say they cannot afford a baby right now. And a lot of them also will say that their male partner either will not invest and will not be present, which therefore is a threat to her, is a threat to the baby, or they're literally, abusive. And we know from the data, if your husband is abusive to you and you have a child, they're very likely to, there's not 100% correlation that if you're violent with your partner, you're going to be violent to the child. But that's not an environment that is sort of promoting the well-being of your offspring and healthy for you as the mother. I can't tell you what it meant. I feel emotional because when women are doing this, it is actually natural and it's actually to the benefit of us as a species. And yet they're harassed, they're denied the abortions that they need. The data, shows if they are not able to access that abortion that they need, they're more likely to be on food food stamps, they're more likely to lose their job, to, fall into poverty. And then that child, as we know, doesn't grow up in an environment that will promote their well-being and health. And so I just thought your framing of it was phenomenal. And just, I was like, why can't we have this? Like, we need it on a billboard, because the way that we're doing policy, and I think the way that we talk about abortion is just completely wrong.
Yeah. In many, many ways, it's wrong. And depending on the person, there are degrees of wrongness that come out. Yeah, Piers Morgan just had another horrible sexist on. And, we are all just moving on. Yeah. Right? That happened. Well, yeah. But I was going to say, look, now, first, the word natural is loaded. Well, and it's often weaponized against vulnerable bodies. Mm-hmm. What you're doing is not natural, you person who has less power than me. So, and we're back to that horrible party you were at in grad school.
And that's the argument against abortion. They say it's not natural. You're not doing God's whatever, right? Yes. Will. And it's like, no, actually, it is.
There are many ways to be unsafe.
Right.
Whether you are a human animal or a non-human animal, that perception of safety under the condition of pregnancy is a major factor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a broad way of understanding a lot of decisions, conscious and physiological, if you like, to end a pregnancy.
Yeah.
What is this maternal body safe? Is the child going to be safe? And that is a strong factor in the likelihood of that pregnancy continuing.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
Just that. So you can be unsafe as a human being because of finances, which is also a measure of abusive control, but is also a measure of racism. It's a measure of sexism. It's a measure of many things. It's why you only live close to the good subway stops in New York. There are many costs to safety, right? Or it could be physical safety, like actual immediate violent harm. It could be, the safety of your future and your fulfillment, which is a perfectly legitimate understanding of the safety of your trajectory.
Yeah.
That this will derail the things that bring me joy. That is a perfectly legitimate thing to say at a number of different ages, to say that means that my life is under threat, right?
Yes.
So, it doesn't always have to be physical safety, but also physical safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's always tied to abortive decisions.
Right.
Always.
And you write about certain species where, particularly ducks,
I know I ruined mallards. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, people should Google it, but on your own time, duck gang rape is you'll see what goes on.
So the main question I have is not why is there so much rape in the animal world? The animal world is full of horror and beauty. It's all the things. It doesn't care what we feel about it. It just is.
Yeah.
So that's fine. No, the question I always have, because it's true, mallards it's called sexual coercion in science.
Okay, got it.
So mallards are sexually coercive, violently and aggressively so, a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. No, my question about YouTube is why there are so many people who have filmed duck rape as amateurs.
Right. It's a genre.
And that's both horrifying and funny, to be fair. It is both. It can be both. It can be both.
It will feel both.
It feels both, because I'm there's always a part of me that's why aren't you helping her?
Yes.
So that's
so
fine.
help
when
the duck.
scientists
Help her. Don't film it.
Yeah.
There is a video you can look at if you're curious, but if you see it in the wild, see something to say something.
Yeah. I don't know how you say something to the
to
duck,
a duck,
but you could just disrupt.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I bring it up because talk about this other fascinating fact, which is sort of related to abortion, which is this idea, which was, really promulgated in the, I would say early 2000s. It's a false fact. If you don't remember, Todd Aiken, thank God, he was a congressman who was asked about, are you worried that you're banning abortion and what's going to happen to rape victims, which is, in 13 states right now, if you're raped, you don't. And he said, well, if it's rape, the female body has a way to shut that down.
And we're like, well, we had a way to shut you down.
Yes.
God.
And we did.
And we did.
And
thank you.
Yes.
Yes, no, we did. So no, statistically, as far as we can tell, there indeed is no evidence of extra miscarriage in conditions of rape.
Right.
That is not a thing. You are just as likely to become pregnant from a well-timed act of violence enacted upon your vagina, as you are in a perfectly consensual situation.
Yes.
The only male factor in this regard that seems to increase likelihood of a pregnancy not going through is simply how frequently you have had sex lately.
Yeah. Tell us
So
about
this
that.
is the thing. So there are a lot of people out there, probably including your listeners and viewers, who are trying to become pregnant, which is about the worst time of a person's life. It's so much undesired sex. There's just so much. If you are in a hetero cis relationship, you are getting laid so much more than you want to, no matter how horny you are. It's a lot. And then, but the alternative to that, right? You know, and come on, I'm a very sex positive person. I love me some sex, but I've been there. I'm like, I guess it's noon. You know, which does great things for relationships. Just wonderful.
Sure.
Anyway, so okay.
No man has ever complained, by the way. I'm sure.
Yes, they have. Yes.
Okay.
No,
There
let's
we
put
go.
that myth to
Okay.
bed. Sometimes he doesn't want to perform.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Just because you have a dick doesn't mean you want to do a thing with it.
You're right. No, you're right. I'm being
it's true.
stereotypical.
It's the stereotype. Although, to be fair, you know, we are literally penetrated in those conditions. Right. It could be more fun. All right. Fine. So, okay. The alternative, if you want to be more strategic, is there's a bunch of things you could pee on, right? That you buy from a store, right? There are these like ovulation predictors and things like that. Just having sex every other day actually is just as likely to produce a pregnancy, but you're less likely having one perfectly timed cycle positive sexing to produce a baby than if you've just had a lot of the sex.
All right.
And the reason might be not because of a failure in timing, but because your body has become used to being exposed to a lot of sperm. Actually, just that. It's an immunological, that's the theory. The theory is that it's immunological. And that's one of the interesting things, because we used to think if you have sex with the same partner, then you're training specifically to him. Yes, but you get the same effect anyway, at least in terms of if you're just having sex with lots of randos.
Sperm is sperm, you know? It's not special.
So now there's like a whole corner of science trying to figure out why. Like, is it something in the seminal fluid? Is it specific? Is it an immunological? Should she take Benadryl? Many questions for infertility there.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, isn't it wild that
Wow.
You're special, but you're not that special.
You're not that special.
Mostly my body needs to just accept this much sperm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And just to come back to I'm going to bring it back to duck rape. So I'm obsessed with the mechanism that female ducks have to sort of fight,
Trapdoor
protect themselves. The fact that humans don't have that, setting is actually evidence that perhaps men aren't inherently violent towards us, and male violence isn't this thing that we evolutionarily had to protect ourselves from. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. The way to unpack that, because you have to, right? The first way to unpack it is to say that human males have really boring penises. That's like the shortest way to say it. Scientifically speaking.
Sorry, guys.
Scientifically speaking. No, I'm a big fan. I love them. They're great.
I love a boring penis.
Yeah. I mean, they seem like a lot to have. It's hanging
heavy?
there. It
Yeah.
has to, is it going,
Where do they put it all
Yeah.
the time?
It's just a lot to manage. So I have sympathy. And I'm a fond of them in other ways. But no. They have, scientifically, they have really boring penises. They don't have a phallus that has evidence of, use as a countermeasure for male competition. That's what I mean by that.
Okay.
Right? So for a chimp. Okay, a chimpanzee has a penis that's kind of wedge-shaped, actually.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend. But not that I've
sounds
tried. But I mean,
painful,
it's still a penis. It's
Yes.
we're not going to get that into it. Okay.
You
So
can
anyway, but
Google
the
it,
point
too.
is their seminal fluid forms this thing called a block. Right. I talk about it in the book. Yeah. Basically, it hardens and it kind of block up near her cervix like a weird jelly crystal kind of thing that blocks the sperm from competitors, because chimps are getting laid all the time. There's just a lot of sex in chimp land, and they're very promiscuous, lots of different partners ostensibly, or could be. So the idea is that it's good to have a penis shape that can wedge itself past the kind of the
wall,
wall of
old
another
sperm.
guy's.
Okay.
And that's a lot to unpack, right? Because that means they're having sex that often. It's fun. No, but the other thing to know about it is that with the ducks, and a number of other species with a lot of this sexual coercion, you end up seeing the vagina and the penis, which co-evolve in every species that has them, competing in structure and function, where the female vagina is trying to protect itself from unwanted sperm in various ways, and the male phallus is trying to get it in there regardless. So what you end up with in a lot of duck species is a kind of curlicue. Yeah. It's kind of like a it's like a party favor of a penis. It's just a lot. And her vaginal complex is equally complicated because what she has are these amazing little like trap doors when she's in a coercive sexing that she can trap these undesired sperm in a side pocket, and then when he finally goes away, it can be expelled. Wow. Sometimes she'll even tap herself a little, but she can get rid of that stuff. But when there's a partner she wants, the path to the waiting egg opens. A lot of people are very, poetic about their like a waiting flower, and I'm like, it's probably not like a waiting flower, but
but you're fine.
Yes, it's more like that. It's more like you'll do.
Sure,
you'll do.
Sure.
I'm a duck. Let's get this over with. But yeah, so you see that in other words. So I went through in the last chapter of the book trying to trace like, okay, what evidence do we have that male coercive sexual behavior, male rape in our species is something that we had so much of that we should call it normal.
Yeah.
Because, right? So from an evolutionary perspective, what's normal should be built in your body plan. It's not a local cultural phenomenon. It's a thing that's had long enough that it evolved into that thing, right? Yeah. And so you should see greater miscarriage in cases of rape if it were, right? You should see very weird, exciting, but weird penises, that are competing with that vaginal complex. We're not seeing that. It's really straightforward. It's just kind of a shaft, just kind of doing its thing.
Yeah, it's easy to have sex compared to other species.
Yes. And we're also very eager to do it as a species. We are randy, just like a chimpanzee. We are promiscuous.
We're as promiscuous as the chimpanzees. Would we be doing it all the time if we could?
I don't know how to measure that scientifically, to be fair. Just because diversity is a feature, not a bug, and what human beings are really good at is creating diverse culture. We are so good at innovating on our cultural norms, including gender norms. We're so good at innovating around reproductive behaviors. We're so good at changing it up to suit and trying it out. And we call that culture, right? Because then a local community does it, right? What we have right now is 8 billion people in lots of different human cultures with lots of different norms around sexuality. How would you test base promiscuity with that kind of diversity?
Sure.
And you'd also, so you could ask people if they're horny, but that means they're going to have to tell the truth. And you'd have to also catch them at the right moment. A chimp is not constantly horny. Yeah. Like a chimp's going about, and you can't ask her either, but a chimp's just going about her life, eating a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
Just
having a good time.
Just having a day.
Wow.
Like even promiscuous human beings, it's not all the time.
Yeah.
So then that means when do you
It's not every
ask?
7 seconds.
It's not every 7,
myth.
and you're not going to be accurate even in remembering how often.
How horny you are.
It's subjective. Like, I guess it's how good your vibe is. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought that was a fascinating fact because coming back to the bro at the frat party in the early 2000s, I don't remember much, but I really remember sitting in my women's studies 101 class. We were going through all different theories, and I did feel like my professor at the time was like annoyed that she had to tell us about this. She was like, and then there's the evolutionary theory that rape is natural, and then went into the spread the seed thing. And I could tell she like wasn't a fan of it, but she had to share it. And I guess what I loved about, and I'm obsessed with like masculinity. I wrote a book about healthy masculinity. I believe that men are good. Like that is my core belief in the world.
Pretty easy to sign on to.
Thank you.
That is a low bar.
But it is a low bar. But there's also so much evidence around us that men are, not good, right? And particularly with sexual violence, I feel that often the sort of just mindset that we have, I think in the United States, but in many other countries, is that sexual violence is normal. Men are naturally, boys will be boys, and men are naturally going to be violent towards women. And it's been hard for me to find even evidence that that's not true, right? So you go in Scandinavian countries where they have much higher levels of just feminist policies, right, in their government. So women are, in terms of attitudes and policies, far more equal to men. Yeah. And yet it hasn't significantly reduced sexual violence. What I found really fascinating about what you said in your book was basically like, if we just look at it biologically, we know that this wasn't, or we can sort of assume men are not like sort of genetically,
The male Homo sapien is not biologically destined to be rapey.
There we go.
That.
You said it
that right
perfectly.
There. And to be clear, chimps can be jerks. Okay? And Jane knew this. Goodall knew that. She knew that. She wrote about it. She knew. You can be a perfectly peaceable species and totally be a violent jerk. It's both. Right? Which means also that you can see male chimps doing mate guarding, which looks a lot like abusive partners in human beings, sequestering her away from other males, isolating, being violent towards her, but just enough, being jerks. Yeah, they can do that, But when they want to actually have sex, they're solicitous. So in primatology, that means that they're being nice. They're being nice about it. Okay, now you can see that in human abusers where you can see someone who's really horrible, but then who's really nice that one night. And it's very confusing. He's still abusive. So
got it.
Put that over there.
Sure.
Also, chimps are chimps and humans are humans. It's okay to say that also we're our own species and there are things that are unique to us.
Right.
Just because right? Because that's part of the problem with leaning on that evolutionary argument for what. Just because we've evolved a certain way doesn't mean that it's good for us to do that.
Yes.
Also, so let's just put that out there. Also true that like if we were a species that had a lot of rape, we should have some physiological evidence for counter-evolution. It should be the case that if it were so normal, evolution is about how normal. We're talking population-wide, we're talking this group, it takes time to evolve a different vag. Okay? That takes a lot of time, And so that means that, like, in other words, you have to assume a lot of it over a lot of time for the possibility of a mutation that would produce a different miscarriage rate, a different, a different,
Yeah.
And we don't have that. It's true that we don't have that.
Right.
That doesn't discount the horrible experiences that many, many people have had from sexual violence. That doesn't say that that's not real or even that it's not common.
Yeah.
Indeed, we could say that that seems a common experience for many people, right? Nevertheless, is it most natural to our body plan as a species? Nah.
Yeah.
No. We can defang that naturalistic claim right away.
Totally.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of bad stories we tell about male bodies and how they evolved.
Like what?
Testosterone gets a bad rap. Such a bad rap. Okay? I have it in my body. You have it in your body. They have it in their body. It's just about base level. Let's equal that real quick. Also, with testosterone, everyone's like, oh, it makes you more aggressive, more sexually aggressive, more aggressive. You even see that in how some, women in their 40s who are going on T start to talk about their own experiences. They talk about it in this really bro-y way.
Oh, really?
They're like, I got really horny and I'm just like a guy. And I'm like, you're not like a guy. You're just like a horny woman.
Which exists.
But now you have permission to say it in public, which you didn't before. And that's also great. So, so testosterone, there's this really beautiful study. So a lot of the studies on testosterone that show that it makes you more aggressive, more violent are actually based on prison populations. So that's not a great representative body. And very specific social conditions that reward violence and things like that. So they set up, this was a psych study. I don't remember the authors. Sorry.
I think I know which study you're going to talk about.
Yeah, they set up the game where, to win in this game, you have to collaborate and be cooperative.
Yeah.
You are rewarded then by being collaborative and cooperative. Like that's how you win. Okay. So the people who won the most had high baseline testosterone. Okay. Which is a better way of interpreting testosterone and what it does to your behavior, which is complex because it's never one-to-one. It's not like a shot and now you're a new person, right? Is that it makes you more competitive, but competitive in a way that tends to be rewarded in your local norm, right? Which is to say it's about living in a world that not only permits but encourages a certain kind of masculinity.
Exactly.
That would be competitively rewarded.
Yeah.
So that's that. So no, it's because we built the world this way.
I love that study.
Yeah.
I think
I love
it
it
is
so much.
Such a fascinating, it's not just more collaborative, I think it's also telling the truth. So basically you have to be truthful, you have to be collaborative, you have to be pro-social. And this comes back to, oh my God, this is like leading perfectly into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And you just referenced this just in the way that the female and the male body are sort of built or what they're trying to do. So female body's trying to select the right sperm or select the right, am I
in
interpreting?
conditions of reproduction. When it comes to reproduction, we do want the best possible chance for our kids.
Yes.
All mammals want that. That's a baseline female mammal want.
Totally.
Right?
It's like a survival instinct.
It's just a basic thing.
Right.
And sometimes that's the best sperm and sometimes it's the best caregiver, actually.
Well,
Right? Because there are different ways. Yes, you were going to say.
No, but that's exactly right. Look, we're in this sort of moment in history where women are really pulling away from relationships with men.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yes. It used to be sort of a general truth, right? That women want to get married and men, it's like the ball and chain, or women want relationships and commitment and men don't. And we've seen this completely sort of reverse with some of the data that's coming out where men now want to be married more than women do. Men are also pulling away from dating and they don't want to approach women. They don't want to hit on women. They don't, people aren't dating it and they're not having as much sex as they used to, like in, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's been bewildering for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, let's talk about it because I am sort of experiencing this in real time where I've been single. Well, I've been in relationships in and out, but like for the last 5 years, I haven't been in a long-term relationship.
Sure.
I find it, and I find that there are many women around me. This is like not a unique experience at all. It's the number one, I do another show called Boy Problems where we answer questions, and it's the number one question. It's the most common question, which is like, I cannot find a man who is suitable. I cannot find a man. My expectations are not even that high. I just want the bare minimum, and I can't even find it.
I love how it's always your fault.
Well, that's
right?
the thing.
Everyone's like, well, your standards are too high.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, what about what the field has to offer?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Like, why is it our fault? Maybe they should be better.
Well, that's the thing. But the discourse, and
Yeah.
it's tied to the male loneliness crisis. And like, honestly, reading your book, I hope this is permanent, but it has been like a week and a half. And I do feel like it rewired the way that I think about being single. And I
hope in a good way.
In a good way.
Okay, cool.
Where I'm not like, where is he, and what's wrong with me that I need to level, I need to go out more. I need to go out at 10 p.m. at a bar, even though I'm 38. And
tired.
I'm so tired. Or I need to go on more dating apps. And I realized, like, wait, is the fact that I'm single and that so many women are single right now, and this is not to say, I'm not saying men are bad. I think there are a lot of men who are in great relationships, and then there are a lot of men who are becoming, there's data behind this, Scott Galloway talks about this all the time, more asocial. There's an entire ecosystem, right, of men that they're finding online that's telling them that women are horrible and they're, and there's more misogyny, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that I am single and that I don't have a male partner and that I don't see a male partner who would be suitable for me is actually not a negative. It's evolution.
It's the field as it lies.
Right.
Yeah.
And tell me if I'm misinterpreting any of this. I don't want to turn it to like pop psychology, but you talk about how part of why we survived as a species is because of that female agency. It's because women chose pro-social, men, we talked about this with other species, like it chose men who would invest in them and the offspring.
Yes.
And the men who were more violent, the men who were more aggressive, those were men were less likely to be reproduced with, and therefore that's why we are the way that we are. Basically, this is my question. It's a very long-winded way of getting into it, but do you think that the fact that so many women are choosing to be single now is actually them sort of improving our species? And again, I hate the word natural, but that it is normal and natural as opposed to there's something wrong with you and you have to find a guy, and the fact that you can't find a guy means that you're doing something wrong.
I think it is normal and natural to want things.
Yeah.
How wonderful is it to live in a culture where we get to want things and articulate them and act on those desires given the world around us. And that's not to say, oh, American women be privileged. Also, of course, there are a lot of people who don't even understand the phenomenon of dating in this world. People lie and they are equal. These are contemporary cultures, different cultures, but contemporary by definition because they're alive right now. There are lots of ways of going about this like love and sex and marriage thing across human cultures, right? And all of them are natural. And all of them, well, some of them cause measurable harm. But nevertheless, all of the spaces in which one does have desire and choice and freedom to act on that choice, they're great.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
So great that you don't want to be with a dude because that means you get to want stuff and you get to want not to.
Yeah.
That, I think, is really wonderful, and we should give more lip service to that and stop treating it like a crisis.
Yes. There are a lot of women who, there's this whole decentering men kind of movement, particularly online. I think younger women, Gen Z women, are just like, I'm done. I'm not even dating men. I'm not talking to men. I don't, and there's a 4B movement, and, it's not just in the US. I love that for people who that works for. And like, that's not even me. I'm not even saying like seeing things from your evolutionary or the evolutionary perspective that you bring, which is correct. It's not even that it legitimizes for me or sort of gives me validation in terms of a choice to not have a man in my life. It almost gives me validation in the sense that like, it's okay that I don't want to reproduce with men that I don't want to reproduce with. And that actually female agency is an important part of our species. And it shouldn't be, I mean, I guess I'm talking in circles. You said it, that it's not that women's standards are too high. And actually, don't we want women's standards to be high?
So I'm queer. I date men and women, not usually at the same time, sometimes. But I can also say that, some of those stats, some of that generational effect is also true, where many types of queer kids are also having less sex than I would have at the same age. So that's the thing I find bewildering, in part because for me, sexuality was such a space of actualization and freedom, that desire was a way of coming into my being, no pun intended. Like it was just, that's one of the things that's been so interesting and challenging to me. And I'm like, because maybe what happened is we helped build a world in which that wasn't the only way to have the feeling of individual difference and actualization and desire and what have you. Like, in other words, maybe my generation did some good work to create a world in which there are lots of ways to find your diverse self that isn't only getting laid. So I'm actually in a deep kind of self-examination period right now when I think about that stuff, because it's kind of like, on the one hand, I deeply don't get why they are so much less promiscuous than I was at their age. Not that one has to be, but because I'm like, that many of you are though? Because like I was, I was definitely an outlier, but like, the curve was different. It was a different curve than now. And that's interesting, and some people say it's the loss of third space. There's like, I don't think there's one hot smoking gun. I think it's complex. But I think you're right to point out that it's also about female choice for those of us who are female. I think it's also about like looking out and saying, I actually want my sex life to look a certain way. And if that is not available to me, my toys are great, like, right? Or whatever one might say for their reason. You know what I mean? I'd also want to put in there just a little pin.
Yeah.
It's also perfectly okay, biologically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, and also socially speaking in the US, to not want to reproduce at all ever.
Well, let's talk about that. Because I love that part where you talk about childless women and childless people are sort of necessary in a way. You talk about eusocial species like bees and meerkats, where a lot of, like a high percentage of them and end up not having children, or sometimes they're just asexual, or they're not reproducing, so that they can take care of friends' babies. And is that true? Like, do you think that applies to human beings? Do you think that's why?
I don't know if we're classically eusocial the way a biologist would usually mean it, but we are so social, so crazy social, and so interdependent. I mean, like, on the face of it, I would just first say there is no member of a society who is unimportant to that society.
I love that.
And I don't just mean out of like pity. I mean, literally, it takes all of us to do this crazy thing we call humanity. It takes all of us. We are always at any given moment about to fall apart, actually. So like, we actually need all of us to make our societies work. And that's true whether you're talking about hunter-gatherers or whether you're talking about huge industrialized urban populations. Like, we need all of us, right? And all of us are contributing, including the sweaty guy in his basement, whether he admits it or not. He is also contributing. And that's the thing. Whether or not we're mad at him for doing bad stuff, he's still a member of the society. For example, there is probably someone, let's say a parent, who cares about him. And that means that his well-being affects that person's well-being, because we have evolved to actually have direct physiological responses to the well-being of people we care about. There are immunological effects to whether or not someone in your family is sick, not just because you might get sick, but also because of the stress, because of the emotional labor, because of all of it, right? So no, helping others do well literally can be a selfish act for the human animal. You know what I mean?
What do you say to people who say that the male loneliness crisis is an evolutionary phenomenon. There are people online who are saying, particularly a lot of women who are saying,
what do they mean?
They mean men who hate women or incels are in their basement.
Yeah.
They
not everyone in a basement is an incel.
Not
but
everyone. Some are. Exactly. And some incels aren't even in a basement. They're in other rooms.
Some of them are on TV.
Some of them are on TV, and some of them have very big YouTube channels. Yeah. So some people are saying those men. This is where it gets a little, tricky. Where you're like, it's not that we want to erase anybody, and it can kind of like get into weird like eugenics, but it's that basically those men. Well, the way that I relate to it is in the way that you talked about it in terms of history, where men, who are aggressive towards us, like these incel communities, they're like, I hate you, have sex with me. And it's like, no, that's not because I'm feminist. That's because I'm a human. And that is like not something I want to do. Like that, like the ick, right? Like is a scientific, I think, true thing that happens in women's bodies when there's a man that's just, again, not safe, right? However we sort of define that, you talked about it sort of more broadly earlier.
Yeah.
So do you think that women not having sex with these guys is evolution?
Evolution takes a long time.
Yeah.
We're talking about cultural evolution. So cultural evolution is super fast. Evolution in the classic sense is like a thing where your body is deeply changing over time, huge amounts of time. There haven't been these boys in their basements for that long.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean? For one thing, their moms weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts at some point in not that long ago. So, the conditions of their lives are greatly shaped. They're not wrong to say that the conditions of their lives are in part shaped by the history of feminism, by the increased agency of their own parents, who then were able to financially provide for their sorry asses. Okay, so there's that. I mean, I would say that, like, basic principle, nobody owes their body to anybody. Yeah. Okay? And it must be disappointing to have been told explicitly or implicitly your whole life that someone did owe you her body, and then find out that she does not believe that to be true, and that the spiraling disappointment probably depends on their circumstances and their own mental health from there.
Yeah.
But like that basic thing of just not getting my body is mine and I don't owe it to you is the real challenge. It's the real challenge. It's a challenge in capitalism for who owes who labor. It's a challenge in feminism, which is always tied to these things, because especially we don't owe. We female folk don't owe our bodies for all of these different types of labor, reproductive, sexy, otherwise, right? I don't owe you my vag. I don't. I just don't. And you don't owe me your whatever you got going on in there, and I'm not about to check. I think a lot of it really does stem from that basic concept. But I will point out that we did not have that concept, in many human cultures for a very long time. The idea of owing labor to others is deeply embedded in a lot of cultures.
Got it.
A lot of cultures, including whether they're female bodies or not, right?
Yeah.
So I can accept that the thing that I take very sacred, which is I don't owe my body to anybody and neither does anybody else, is also a very in my culture and recent idea.
Yeah.
I can accept that too.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with it because I like the idea.
Yeah.
And I think we can build better societies with that idea.
Well, that too, right? The fact that women didn't reproduce with violent humans actually didn't that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding or oversimplifying, but didn't that make our species better? Isn't that good for women? Like, not only are women allowed to say no, but isn't it good for us for them to say no?
So this is going to be Franz de Waal, and it was great. And there is this idea that we evolved not to be so competitive, but actually what's distinctive of the human species and maybe the hominins just before us is that we evolved to be collaborative and cooperative. We evolved to emphasize those portions of our behavior and inclination rather than the violent competition. Yeah. And that would have been then very key to our success, our obviously unlikely 8 billion.
Yeah.
That actually very much depended on us working together. Yes. Yeah. Whether or not that was bred into us by selecting for the nice guy in deep time, I don't know. It could also be that like testosterone makes you more competitive, and in a world in which collaborative behavior is rewarded, then that can be a self-selection.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah.
They can,
Yeah.
self-domesticate, if you will.
Yeah.
That they
go to therapy, or just
or whatever that meant 2 million years ago. But yes, go to your furry ass therapy and make it better.
Do we have any evidence that prehistoric societies had therapy, like bonded over?
We definitely do not
shared
have evidence
trauma.
for that.
Okay.
Well, because we have so little evidence of prehistoric societies in general.
Yeah.
We know a lot about what's left in their funeral rites when we found them.
Yeah.
We know bones. We're reinterpreting some of those bones. Some of those guys that we thought were guys with their weapons turned out to be female. So that's
Talk
a thing
about
where
that. Talk about that.
there's this thing where we used to assume that a lot of prehistoric societies were very male dominated and that hunting was exclusively associated with male bodies and male members of those societies because we kept finding all of these buried skeletons with lots of fancy weapons and decorations and shit. And we made the assumption, largely out of body size, but some other things sometimes, that those bones were definitely male, right? Because of all the weapons. There's been a whole reckoning in people who do that science now because we have done proteomics and other kinds of analysis to show that, that was a female skeleton. I see. She was a highly regarded hunter. Okay, well, that changes that story. That doesn't mean that all societies were doing that,
Right.
But it does mean that it was common enough
Yeah.
to have had evidence
Yeah.
remain. So that.
Yeah. There's a million other things I want to talk about. Menopause is an evolutionary strength.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to.
Would you, I'm going to give you a question that's way too simple and you're going to hate me for it, but.
I don't hate people for questions.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, I hate
appreciate it.
some people, but you seem good.
The other thing that the bro at the party says, right, is a version of patriarchy is natural. We evolved in this and only as if the idea of feminism, and when I say feminism, I don't mean it as a political ideology. I mean it as where women are equal, right? Where people are people. That's feminism. How would you answer someone who says that patriarchy is natural and we've always been patriarchal and we just haven't been patriarchal since the Me Too movement?
Oh, well, that's some bullshit.
12 years ago.
The short answer is that's some bullshit. Nice to meet you. Walk away. That's what you do.
But what would you say?
You don't have to talk to everybody,
I know,
Liz.
I know.
It's
Thank
okay.
you. I do feel
It's okay.
But I get really. You're right.
Right?
You're right.
Yes, I've met these people too.
I think it's a common.
It's a common thing. Now, one of the things that I love about this idea of what's natural and what's not is that all human behavior is natural by definition because we are not robots and we are the animals we are, which means that the great diversity of human behavior and personality type is likewise natural, which also means that a wildly violent matriarchy could also be natural. Wouldn't recommend that either. The bonobos do some mean stuff to those guys. They really do.
Don't they bite their ears off?
There was a penis that one time. Yeah, so there was a recent study and it came out well after my book had come out. So I felt really vindicated because, okay, so if you don't know, the reputation of the bonobo, whom we're equally genetically related to as the chimp, is that they are the free love peaceniks who have a lot of sex. They're like that one chick in Brooklyn who runs the play parties because that's how they resolve conflict. They fight all the time, but they resolve conflict by hooking up.
Yeah,
and just a lot. Wouldn't recommend it. They also do it with their own kids. Don't do that. Don't do that. Not cool. Don't be a bonobo, right?
Don't be a bonobo.
Be a human being,
Yeah.
right? We also misunderstand that they don't have violent conflict and they are also matriarchal. The females are in charge.
And it didn't used to always be that way. They kind of had a revolution, right? Against male aggression.
We don't know.
We don't know. Okay,
What we do know, it's hard to measure when you weren't studying it at the time. It's what we do know from a recent study that came out that I felt vindicated by was that the majority of bonobo violence, if I'm saying this right, is gangs of females keeping males in check. That, and to keep them in line. There's a lot of bitch slapping in bonobo land. And that was so amazing to me because that also tells me, because I'm not a Gaia chick, okay? I'm not a fluffy, that's not my feminism. I respect that's powerful for some, but whatever. But there's this idea that if we just had matriarchies, things would be cool. And I'm one, have you met Margaret Thatcher? Come on, people.
Sarah Palin. I mean, there's a lot of women right now that I would not want in charge of us.
Being a woman doesn't automatically make you good. All human beings can can be good. Your sex is not a predictor. We do, however, live in a culture of permissiveness such that if you were inclined to have bad behavior, the males might be more able to act out on it. Because there isn't as much keeping them in check in patriarchies. But anyway, no. Primate matriarchies are violent and horrible.
Really?
And they will totally bite off your toe, ear, and or penis, and or just beat you to death if you step out of line as a male. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Like, I don't want my son to live in that world.
Right.
And not just because of him. I'm very American. I want freedom and I want, nonviolence.
Right. I don't know why women, and I'm saying women, I feel like I can't speak on behalf of anybody, but I feel like we have this like scarcity mindset when it comes to mating.
Scarcity.
And like there is this, I'm 38. I gone on a journey about kids or no kids. I thought I wanted kids, and I've talked about how like I felt like after 35, like my body, like I just was ready to do it. And then, haven't really found anyone I want to literally reproduce with, which I've now come to terms with after reading your book as being perhaps a good thing instead of this like, but I felt like it was a failure. Like I felt like
We're made to feel like it is.
We are made to feel like it is. And it comes back to this idea that women who are childless are seen as failing their biology, their role, their maternal instinct. One of the many things your book goes into is the way that, like childless women are really necessary for our survival. And that's just such a powerful reframe. And something is really powerful when you're like, it almost feels like that's a truth I knew, but I didn't know how to express, right? Like you put words, I think, for the experience of being a woman in a very confusing sort of cultural ecosystem where, we're told, I mean, just the whole way you approach abortion, aging, mating, pregnancy, I think is just so revolutionary because it's so different from the way that we're brought up to believe about those things. Anyway, I'm so appreciative of you.
I'm so
and
glad
your
that
work.
I've contributed something. It was my first book. I had to kind of figure out how to write a book writing
hard.
it. So
You're
that
so
was
good
really,
at writing.
Oh, thank
You're
you, dear.
so good.
I have a number of friends who are child free, some by choice, some not exactly choice, more of that age out thing and ambivalence and then. Yeah. And I don't say that isn't a choice. They say it's not a choice. Right. So that's me not wanting to speak over because not acting is also choice. But I also know women who have had children without a partner. I have a very dear friend who had chosen to have a child without a partner, had already gone to the IVF clinic, already had all this stuff, met a guy and climbed him like a tree, but not because he was very tall, but not because, so that's what I always say about him. Not because like she wanted to then reproduce and like, best ideal scenario, but just like, oh my God, I love this guy very much, so much love this guy. And then she got married and that was her second marriage, you know, in her 30s. And it's like, there's no one path to motherhood for those of us who become mothers. You know what I mean? And all of the paths are fine. Yeah. And all of the paths that don't involve actually having children, also super great. Right. Also can be super fulfilling. And it's not a door prize. It's not like someone trying to be affirming like, oh, that sucks for you, but it's great though. No, actually it can be badass and wonderful and awesome.
100%. Yeah. And that there's like many ways to, I don't want to say many ways to mother because I feel like that makes it sound,
it's a platitude.
People who, exactly, it's a platitude. Yeah. But there's many ways to contribute. And to me, the data that you're presenting in the book shows that it's okay, you'll be a great auntie. And those things are sort of told to women who are ambivalent or honestly sort of my position. But what your book and your framing of evolution shows is that not only is it fine, it's actually going to help other children do well, other parents be able to sort of take care.
And every member of the society you're in.
Exactly.
You don't know what you mean to other people. That's true for everyone. Yeah. And not just the people who came out of the woodwork and called me during the pandemic. And I'm like, I don't even remember your name, but you liked me in high school, I guess. That's amazing. Totally happened. Many.
After you.
Yes. Whoa. I was not a popular kid in high school. No. But during the I mean, it was fine. I had my group. Sure, you know, I just wasn't prom queen or whatever. Yeah. You know, but no. Guys came, specifically guys, and so that was a thing, came out of the woodwork online to find me during the pandemic. And some I hadn't heard from in like decades. It was like a whole thing. And it's because in the pandemic, a lot of people reached out. We were stuck in our houses. What do? You get curious about people, whatever. But it also was a moment where like I had no idea I mattered to those people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which was so like moving and wonderful. But it also taught me that like, no, I never really know the degree to which I matter to other people. So the best baseline assumption is that you do. right?
Yeah.
The best assumption is actually you do and you don't know. So just function as if you do.
Yeah.
You know, have that guide your kindness, have that guide your day, have that guide your choices, but also then don't make choices out of the assumption that you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Or that you only will if you do this one thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you know, sexism tells us the only way for women to matter is by serving men and birthing their babies and raising them.
Yeah.
In all of the sense of that word serve. And that's some bullshit. And we know that that's true. We know it's not supported by the science, but we're not talking about science.
How is it not supported by the science? The trad wife. Because that's the main way that they do the propaganda. They say that's your biology. You're going against your biology by not staying at home, taking care of your kids, and serving a man.
It's not my fault you don't understand the science. Okay, go take a seminar, fucker. Yeah. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
No decent biologist I know under a certain age. We're just gonna... There that is. There he is. You know, that makes a claim like that. No. It's absolutely true that all members of social societies, which we are, and other animals have some too, are vital members of that society and are driving its success. And the idea that a whole half of them literally only has the function in a social group to whelp. No, there aren't many cases of other animals that, almost none, maybe zero. I think actually maybe zero. The only one really is like certain kinds of bees that have a queen that are, then she just spends her days being fed, you know, glorious royal jelly and like farting out eggs. Like that's the only, you know, so if that's what the trad wife wants, you want to sit and fart out eggs all day long? No. I mean, the trad wife thing is a very online phenomenon. And so we shouldn't extrapolate and think that it actually represents the majority of American women or even a significant portion. But it's a thing. It exists. It's an influence.
Yeah. It's a message.
It's a message that's happening right now. It is. And they do. It's interesting how quickly they lean for the ones who don't admit that they're evangelicals. There are lots of closeted ones, but you know, the ones who don't admit that they're evangelicals, they'll reach for the scientific, pseudoscience support for their position.
And it must feel so frustrating, someone who's so familiar with science, when people weaponize it for bigotry, because if you think about so much of the roots of bigotry and just the reason why the bigots basically justify their behavior is really often they use science. I'm putting it in quotation marks.
Eugenics hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, well, oh my God, especially now under the men who are in charge of us. So let's, before we go, because I have kept you here as a prisoner.
Not at all.
I'm just so excited to talk to you. You talk about menopause as an evolutionary strength. So I believe I'm going through perimenopause right now. It hasn't been confirmed.
I am.
But,
there's also no way to confirm. You know that, right?
Well, that's the thing.
Okay. So the horror of the online world is the horror of the online world. No woman should be surprised by the horrors online.
Okay.
One of the horrors online is this whole range of people who tell you that they're going to give you an at-home test for whether you're in perimenopause. Don't buy any of that.
No.
You don't need to pee on those sticks. You don't need to give those blood samples.
Yeah.
Depending what time of day, you're going to have different levels of estradiol, different levels of progesterone. If you are not like a person who does that in a lab normally, you don't have to be in charge of interpreting when that's the right thing to do. That sucks. So there's no test for perimenopause. There's also no test for menopause. What there is menopause, which is defined as you haven't had a period in a year and you are a certain age. Like, in other words, there are people who suffer from anorexia who might not have a period in a year. They're not in menopause.
Right.
Okay, so it's both age and condition defined, which is also a poor definition. Okay. But if you're in your 40s and you have any of a range of common symptoms, you're probably in perimenopause. And that's the test. That's it. What's your birthday?
March 19th, 1987.
So you could very likely be in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Not everything you experience is because of that.
Right.
You can also just have a shitty day.
Right. I have those.
That deep, unplumbed well of rage you're experiencing is not only hormonal, you know, right? So don't attribute everything to it.
From an outsider's perspective, perspective. And by outsider, I mean, I live here, but just because I'm a woman and I'm Canadian, I feel like I have a little bit of an outsider's perspective. Okay. I feel like we have this belief that like patriarchy is like men going after women and men wanting to sort of destroy women. I feel like we have now reached the part of the timeline where men are destroying men.
That's been true for a long time.
It has.
The deep history of the patriarchy is incredibly detrimental to men.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's it encourages all kinds of self-defeating life choices. It also just, in a basic, psychological sense, it makes you feel more alienated. It makes you feel more stressed by you, a guy. It makes you feel like you have weaker connections to the opposite sex. It makes you feel like you're supposed to like dominate, but no one defines dominating usefully. So blah, just dominate in any given direction. Okay, that sounds shitty.
Right.
I feel like also in the deep history of the patriarchy, that we often call it that, the patriarchy, which is to say the history of deep sexist culture, which is mostly the West, but not only, whatever the West is, that it tends to make societies less healthy.
Yeah.
Quite literally less healthy.
And sort of what we're seeing is almost, it feels like we're artificially removing women from certain spaces. And I mean that, of course, there are women in government still. There are women who are part of the administration. There's something that's happening that I feel, and I will probably put this in evolutionary terms that you will find too simplistic, but where we're like removing women from society and from the important pillars of that society and decision making. And women are really important.
Yes.
Women's choices and agency. And when you cut that off, and perspective is being artificially removed.
Yes.
And so it is creating all of the chaos that we're seeing. There's racism too. There's so many other forces. But I feel is, and Andrew Yang randomly, or it seems random because it's like a 2020 fever dream, when he ran for president.
I know, that did happen.
It did happen.
I know.
He said...
the whole tech world. I married a tech guy. So it's like the whole tech world was like, really?
Yeah. I mean, he had some really interesting
Doesn't seem like a bad guy, but anyway, you were going to say.
But he said something to... I'm going to, paraphrase, but during one of the debates, he said something to the effect of, when there's no women in the room, men make bad decisions. Yeah, it's a very simple way of sort of expressing a very complicated, political sort of moment that we're in. I really fear for our species. Like, it does feel like we are, there's not just conflict and, people being kidnapped and just an absurd amount of wealth being put in, a small amount of male hands, but there's also, we're killing our planet, we're killing our own homes, right? And is there an evolutionary way of sort of expressing how wrong this is and how unnatural it is to actually, like, patriarchy feels very unnatural, or it goes against our best chance at surviving and thriving as humans?
Well, I think that, again, by definition, everything we do, including some of the terrible things that we do, are natural because we're human animals behaving. Yeah. So, so I'm just going to, I think just defanging the idea of natural is really useful.
Totally.
But I will say there is a perspective from primatology on this that I think is useful. There's a kind of a reckoning happening in behaviorists, which sounds nerdy, but it's not like they're fighting physically, but like, there's a reckoning, like intellectual reckoning, on what is a patriarchy. What is it to be patriarchal in a society? So we mark chimps as patriarchal, for example. Got these big, bully, dominant males, they really shape local culture and blah, blah, blah. And you can have an alpha female, but she doesn't have the same kind of status as the alpha male and blah, 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 blah. And, what do you mean alpha in a promiscuous group? Anyway, but we say, okay, that's patriarchal. But now we're coming back in and revisiting, but look at all that female power that we were just ignoring in earlier studies. Okay. That's interesting. And isn't it true, likewise, that really powerful females are kingmakers in many of these groups, right? That you can have someone either by literally giving birth to and the status of that son who doesn't migrate, right? The females go to other groups, but the males stay. That's part of how, I talk about that a little in the book, that's part of how you centralize power and keep it going over generations. Right. Princes are always a bad idea. So yeah, but what happens then is that like he grows up benefiting from the status of his mother, and if he rises to a certain kind of social power, it is in large part due to the status of the mother, right? So that's a prince making. There's also king making, where if you are a really popular, really dominant female, males who are challenging the other dominant males need to be in with you, need to have your backing, need to, So really the subtleties of how female power even works in this thing we call a classic patriarchal society, we were disavowing evidence of female power that whole time.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's also useful for us. I think it's useful to remember that you can remove power from a woman, but that doesn't mean that she is powerless. And likewise, when we think generations back, when we look at all of the ways that women were oppressed, we also too quickly discount the effect they had on their societies.
Got
You know what I mean? That thing too, right?
Totally.
Because actually it wasn't just the suffragettes who were moving and shaking things up in early American society. And if you go further back in many other societies too, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also useful. That doesn't mean that we don't need to push the hell back against what's happening right now, because we do.
Yeah.
We do. But we should also give cred where cred is due.
Right.
And stop pretending that they can take away our power.
Right.
Because they can shift regions of power, but they can't actually take away our role in society. They can shift it and we can reclaim it.
Right.
But we are always already powerful here.
Yeah. Wow. That's really beautiful. I mean, it's really just the story you tell. We had another guest, Amanda Montell, talk about just language. And she says that the things that define trends in in our language, things that are cool, are most often coming from marginalized voices and communities, right? We know
that's right. We commoditize it, and that's the whole thing. But
yeah, on fleek. What's a recent, dead ass, right? This is black, black Twitter. It's and then
it's
white
black
people.
Twitter. It's specifically queer black Twitter.
Yes,
actually.
yes,
yeah, and that's been true in New York for a long time.
There you go.
So.
And then a white, cis, frat guy says it now, right? And
yeah,
so
it's weird. But that's so it rolls.
But I think it's so interesting because I kind of asked Amanda at the time, I was like, well, why is that? Why does so much language come from marginalized voices? Because don't have a lot of power, right? Like to be able to, impact culture that way. She kind of, we sort of had it back and forth. She was like, oh, I'm not really sure. And I was like, do you think that it's because, like being marginalized, like makes you more interesting by default? Like you don't just sort of get ahead through powerful. Society is not built for you. And so you have to get more creative about how to go about it. Like I think about disabled activists, right? And sort of the Capitol crawl, right? They crawled the, steps of the Capitol because it was not accessible.
Yeah.
And very often the most creative activists are people with disabilities because nothing is made for them. And so, it just basically makes me think of that when you're talking about power, and just like you think about slavery in the United States and like the way we talk about people who were enslaved as if they were, had no power. They built this country, right? Like really...
They were also horrifically enslaved.
Yes.
Just putting that there.
Of course.
But it is absolutely true that all members of a society are vital to its culture.
Yeah.
And I do agree that in occasions of challenge, look, I think fighting your way for survival is a deep part of the history of our species, no matter what.
Yeah.
And absolutely, we are known for our ingenuity in times of crisis. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't make it easier for people who are suffering and in times of crisis. I also want to say that, I think the more we go back to our classic histories, the more we tend to revise, not simply as a gesture of rightness, but also because it's just true. Whether it's discovering that some of these skeletons buried with weapons were in fact powerful female members of society, whether it's going back and talking about the role of black women in the suffragette movement and the often fraught position they were in with the hella racist members of some of them, or whether it's going back and thinking about how it was we even got the right to own a credit card. that there were always these members we forgot about.
Right. I was trying to less make a point about creativity, but contribution, come back to the idea that, when we tell a story about what happened in that oppressive or in that sort of mindset of this person was oppressed, so they didn't do much. It's like, no, like those contributions can be, or are huge, but our way of talking about it, it's our own sort of bias on.
The shortest way to say it, and you don't need a scientist to say it, is that we need more women in the room.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
You need more women in the room to make the right decisions that need to be made that impact wider society.
Yeah.
That's just true.
I love that. It's a great place to end. Thank you so much for spending so much time. Oh my God, this was our longest episode we've ever had. Everyone, this is like, you gotta read this book. Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution is available everywhere. I think you have a new cover, or is this the new cover?
That's the paperback cover.
That's the paperback.
The hardcover is very similar, just is white.
It's an amazing book. Thank you for writing it and for all of your amazing contributions to the world. I'm like so happy I get to exist in the same timeline as you.
Wow, that's flattering.
No,
oh my
it's
God.
true.
That's
no, like I'm not blowing smoke like up your ass. I really, this like fundamentally had such a huge effect on me, and I'm really, really happy that you powered through all of the research and just all of the work. It must have been just a very laborious thing to undertake, and I really appreciate you doing it.
Thank you. It was also really fun to do.
You can tell, and you're such a talented writer. There's just, I underlined so many things I wanted to come back to. The ending is also very poetic and almost like cinematically beautiful. And this is like there's such a long
citations.
I think I wrote, there you go. Wow. I was like,
she did do that.
Whoa.
She's not lying. She wrote that.
See?
That's so charming. Oh my God. Thank you.
It says, to whatever will make the world easier for women and girls, I will tell my own children someday that every power men had over women is something we gave them. We just forgot. We forgot. We can stop. I have chills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's powerful.
And I had to decide whether to keep that ending given the way the world was going when we were doing edits.
Right.
And I did. Because if you pull the damn camera back, you can see that the entire history of the evolution of our bodies, not just our species, but all the way back in the hominin line, the whole evolution of sex differences has been moving towards egalitarianism.
Yeah.
The entire time. You can line up the damn skeletons and see it. Like, we have been moving towards more sex egalitarian species and then societies in humans for the entire time that we've been making these things.
Yeah.
So if you can pull the camera back, not to discount suffering, not to say we shouldn't take action to push back, but if you pull the camera back and you say, how long has this been going on? You can say, oh, we're on the right path. We're still doing it. This little moment, this little orange creature who is mortal, by the way, like this, and by that I mean it won't be forever. I hope he dies a peaceful death in a safe bed, whenever that happens, what is going to happen?
We're all,
Yeah, because he's old, right? That is not remotely able to completely derail the history of our goddamn species.
Yes.
It is not possible. He does not have that.
Yeah.
None of them do.
And that's on Hopecore. This is why this was a Hopecore special. It's rare that you are learning so much and it doesn't make you more depressed, and you're like, oh wow.
There's some sad, I didn't shy away. There's
for sure.
There's some sad bits.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. There's just so much. It's so refreshing, and I love the way that you see the world. I love the way that you are transforming your industry and just transforming the world just by existing in it. So thank you for coming on Hopecore. Thank you so much for all of your amazing comments. Once again, the best comments on the internet are in our comment section on Spotify. In our episode with Hassan Piker, which I think some of the best comments you guys have ever produced. MA said, the collab we never knew we needed. Love Hassan. He gives us a little hope that there are other men like him out there. Molly says that, Liz, all boys of all ages get boners. Let's fact check that. I'll come back to you. My favorite comment probably we've ever had. Giovanna says, Hassan Piker is the only reason I'm bi. That gets the comment award of the year. Also, Lauren Beard said, even episodes that aren't Hopecore are Hopecore. Love these conversations. Lauren, here's an episode of Hopecore. I hope you liked it. And if you're confused about like, is Hopecore happening? Is it not happening? I don't know. We're figuring it out together as we go. Train is going while we're building the tracks. And I love Hopecore. It got a little bit complicated with production and with many of the other things that we're trying to do at Boy Problems. And so I promise that I will get back to you on that as well. I'm going to get back to you about the boners. I'm going to get back to you about Hopecore. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you everyone for listening, for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye everybody.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
I'm on a plane, I'm at the bar, in your DMs, in your car, looking for some Hopecore. We need some Hopecore. I want some love, I want your heart. I got your number, that's a start. We have your Hopecore.